Welcome back to Chips and Salsa, where we talk about security at Intel with our own industry experts. I'm Jerry.
I'm CRob.
CRob, today we start a new series with the team at Intel who focuses on open source security, including things like Linux kernel fuzzing and security technologies such as TDX.
Yeah, they're doing some really cool stuff, like fuzzing the Linux kernel, and even cooler, they've open sourced all these fuzzing tools and scripts. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. So earlier this week, we had a chance to sit down with Antonio, who manages this team, to give us an overview. So let's talk to Antonio. Hey, Antonio, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Jerry. Hey, CRob. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah.
Hey, me too.
Tell us a little bit, about your background and how you ended up at Intel.
Okay, so I came from academia where I was working mostly in HPC in performance,
Okay.
and I joined Intel as a pre-silicon architect. And from there, learning more about the architecture, learning more about our CPU. There was an opportunity to join the team that was working at the time in open source security mitigations for transient execution side channels, Spectrum Meltdown and the likes. And that was very close to the architecture. You needed to know a little bit about the architecture. So it looked like a good fit. And I joined the team. And now I actually manage that team where we still work on those mitigations in the kernel. And we are also expanding to other areas of the open source security.
What type of other areas are you getting into, Antonio, aside from kernel?
A little bit, whatever interests the different team members, that's how we select, right? But what I would say, if it's open source and if it's security, it kind of fits into what my team does, right?
Awesome.
So right now we have been working a lot on fuzzing. We develop our tools for kernel fuzzing, not just everybody knows syscaller to fuzz the system calling in Linux, but we have other tools to do some more advanced fuzzing, DMA fuzzing, and we open source everything we do, right? So everything is available out there in the internet on GitHub. And we also maintain the reference, the reference software stack for TPM. It's one of those foundational technologies for security. It's used by different operating systems for security purposes and many also end user applications.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, I'm really proud and happy with that team. They do a great work engaging and building a very healthy community on GitHub. I was just actually reviewing an email from them. There's some great feedback that they got from the community. So very, very happy with where they're going. We are also working on, we engage with the community and developing Linux security modules.
Mm-hmm.
We have one of the maintainers of SMAC in our team. And on top of that, we also continue with our existing work with the security mitigations or even functional mitigations in open source in the kernel for transient execution side channel issues.
Yeah.
And that's a never-ending task, right? Because when we go with these mitigations, we go public with them. 2 years later, somebody decides that a new patch is needed in one of those mitigations, and we have to engage with them and work with them, make sure that whatever is working, that they don't break it. If something is broken, to fix it with them. So it's always a continuous process with the community. It's actually very, very fun.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So why is it that the work that you and your team do important for Intel and for our customers?
Well, it's key, right? Linux is everywhere, especially if you think about data center, right? So depending on the different areas that we work on, right? If you think about transient execution side channel mitigations, well, we have to, whenever there is a new issue, we need to make sure that that issue is properly fixed. So we work with our community, with the community. We work internally to deliver timely mitigations for those problems, so that they don't only impact the customers directly, but end users may also be affected, right? So we need to provide solutions for those products for everybody. In other areas that we work on, for example, fuzzing, right? I always say that we create these tools, and there is also this Intel Security Pledge. We have to look for potential vulnerabilities in our products and fix them as soon as we can, right? And if we don't do that, somebody else is going to do it. So I prefer if it's my team who does that. So we really engage with teams all across Intel. We work with them. We enable them. If we need to develop new tools, we develop new tools, or we improve our tools to support them. And we've been working like that very successfully with teams in Chrome OS and in the kernel with different driver teams to find and work with them, and identify issues and find them early on in the process.
Mhm.
And then we're also working, for example, now in the security auditing of the guest kernel for TDX, which TDX is this new technology coming soon from Intel that is going to enable end users running in any cloud service provider to say, look, I don't even trust the host. I don't even trust the cloud service provider. I want to be sure that whatever I'm doing, nobody can look at what I'm doing.
Mhm.
In order to do that, this technology, together with changes in the kernel, and open sourcing those changes in the kernel, enables users to go and say, okay, look, let me see what you guys have done, what this technology does, this firmware, these changes in the kernel, and let's see if I can actually trust what you guys are doing. So, and what the technology says that it does. So we are open sourcing our tools. That means open sourcing all the fuzzing tools that we have developed, all the different modifications, all the different scripts that we've used to fuzz the kernel, the guest kernel, together with documentation on, hey, this is what we've done. This is how you can do it too. So you can trust what we've done, right? And all of that is open source. Anybody can look at it. And we are very excited with that. We are now engaging with the community. We've been talking to the community about this, but we want to, now that everything is getting now open source because the project is coming public now, we want to engage more the community so that, you know, not just so that they trust us, but that for future kernels, they also can say, hey, we don't need Intel for this. We can do it ourselves. Okay? Because we really trust you. You gave us everything we need. We can do it ourselves.
Your methodology sounds very classically open source, where you go out to the community, you're sharing documentation and processes. Around TDX, how's the experience been? Have you gotten a lot of good engagement and feedback from the community on it?
Yeah, we are definitely getting great feedback from everybody. And TDX, and when we work in the community with the patches, when we are releasing the firmware, it's a different team in charge of that. But I think it's a great example of how to work with the community and how to be transparent and be honest about what you're doing, right? How to build that trust with your users in the community out there.
It also helps cultivate getting other ideas, getting feedback and maybe a direction we hadn't thought of inside, right?
Oh, that happens all the time, right? When we go and say, well, we think that this is maybe not so much in TDX, but in other areas where we think, oh, this is the way to go, and all of a sudden you get this feedback from somebody say, have you guys thought about so and so? I say, no, thank you. That sounds awesome. So we are actually very happy about it. I also was talking to somebody internally. They were discussing, well, come on, open source is not that different from developing, closed source or anything like that. He said, oh, it is quite different. You are putting your name out there. You're interacting with the community directly. They can interact with you. You have to engage in the conversation to open source your product. Right? It's not the same. Oh, I've done this. I'm going to productize that. It's a completely different approach. More open, more a lot of collaboration, a lot of communication.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, open sourcing all of our tools, contributing to security mitigations in the kernel. I mean, this is got to have a tremendous impact on the ecosystem in general, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, when I just mentioned a few tools that we have, right? Hopefully, ideally, we would like to cover everything, right? But the impact that it has, for example, this TPM tool or this TPM software stack that I was mentioning, we get requests or we get great feedback all the time from a random person on the internet that it turns out to be somebody working in this big corporation, enabling a new product that is going to be in, I don't know, I'm just making this up, car somewhere, autonomous car. It is insane what people will do with your product. And that sometimes it's difficult for us. People ask, how can you put a number in the impact that you have in business? It's actually very difficult sometimes, but it's very rewarding. As engineers, I can see that when we interact with the community and they say, "Oh, we've been using your product in so and so," it's like, I never thought anybody would do that. That is great.
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah.
So, Antonio, what do you specifically work on yourself? I know we got several people on your team that are contributing in different ways. What are you working on?
I mostly work right now enabling my team. That's a reality. Most of my time is spent connecting them. I'm a big believer that people own their career. It's a big Intel thing. So connecting them to the projects that really interest them and that connects well and align well with their interests and their career goals. I spend a lot of time on that. Making sure that I remove any potential roadblocks for them. Understanding what their needs are, what their interests are, short term and long term. And after all of that, I might have a couple of hours or 3 hours a week to try to write some code. That is normally my Friday afternoon project. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. That's basically my week.
Well, and that's the kind of the trade-off you make going into leadership. You get to do the technology a little less, but it's very rewarding helping, like you said, making these connections for people.
I love it. I really like challenging problems, and there is nothing more challenging than people. So when you have to manage several people, you have a very, very complicated problem. It's a really fun one. So I really enjoy it. Yeah.
So as Jerry mentioned, this is the first of a series of videos we're going to be doing showcasing, the talented people at Intel engaged in open source. And, do you have any kind of final thoughts to start us down this journey?
Well, actually, very excited for everybody to have the opportunity to see the people implementing the magic behind these contributions, and for everybody to learn more about these technologies, to have more time to go into a little more in depth about those contributions. And I think that's really my main thing here. I'm very excited for my team and for everybody, I think, to learn more about the great things I'm doing.
That's excellent.
Well, that's great, Antonio. I think it's awesome that the work that your team is doing to contribute to open source projects, to open source our own tools and projects, to contribute mitigations to the Linux kernel. I mean, this has a tremendous impact across the industry and the ecosystem. So this is awesome. So can't wait to talk to folks on your team about their specific projects. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Antonio.
Thank you everyone for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
Wow, Jerry, that was a really great talk. Antonio, the stuff he and his team are doing is out of sight.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I can't wait to meet with other members of his team and share what they're doing individually to contribute to the ecosystem and the community. So it's really awesome.
Yeah, I think that'll be really exciting to jump into some details around Intel's contributions to the open source ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I think with that, we're going to call this a wrap for today, huh?
Yep. Thanks, CRob. Thanks, Antonio.
Thank you.